Welcome back, Jake.
Welcome back, Franklin.
Announcer voice.
Wednesday.
Tuesday. Well, we are back indeed. It is now Top Cut, so we have our serious pants on. We had our... Pants? I mean, they're shorts, but they're the serious short
of the serious variety.
yeah. They don't have pockets. That's how you know they're serious. So anyway, it looks like top 4 will be rematches from Swiss. So we're going to start out with our good friend DaWoblefet, a.k.a. Leonard Crack, a.k.a. Trey, a.k.a. I feel like he's got other alts, but I don't know all of them. And then we've got Brandon Wright, also known as Bright Size, also known as BTW Size, among other things. Anyway.
So that's our first top 4 set, and then after that we have Ethan Simpson versus Ricky Green, who I believe was our round 1 match, and so we get 2 rematches here in Top Cut, and then winner of those 2 will obviously be playing each other in the finals.
Indeed. So I have a question, because I'm seeing something in the chat, Leonard being 7-1. If you have a frozen game state, does that give you a game loss according to the game?
No, because you just have to shut off the game.
Okay.
It doesn't record anything.
Okay. So yeah, it looks like dropping one game throughout the entire PC so far is not that bad.
No, not at all. That's very nice.
So honestly, actually, do we have a live feed of the video right now?
No.
No. So we will be a couple seconds delayed because the stream isn't too far back. So.
Oh yeah, Leonard didn't share it with us.
Whoops. Rude. So I don't know if you have a second monitor, Jake, but
I do. Yeah.
But yeah, so things will be just slightly delayed for us, given that we didn't have the screen. Oh wait. Ooh. Yes. There we go.
I think we got it.
Nailed it.
Rescue.
All right, Leonard is briefly looking at things, so we'll be all right here. So we should be able to get live feed here. Oh, ooh, there we go. Live feed on our end with the serious pants. Yes, thank you so much, Leonard. Anyway.
All right.
That'll be good. Don't worry about it, Leonard. So anyway, as we're jumping into this match, like we've mentioned, this is a little bit of a rematch. So most of the things that are going on here, we have at least a decent chunk of information. The players have a decent chunk of information. And so we're going into this mostly with things like mind games and just kind of metagaming one another to a certain extent, right?
Right. Yeah, we see the Rayquaza Suicune immediately from Brandon. This is something that he abused a little bit last time we saw him on stream with the Groudon being vulnerable to Scald when that airlock is active. But Leonard instead deciding to lead with the Suicune and the Tapu Fini immediately. Sorry, not the Suicune. Xerneas, same thing.
Yeah, basically. It's a bulky water type, right?
Exactly. So we've seen all of this Suicune's moves. We know it has Scald, Icy Wind, Snarl, and Tailwind. And then obviously Rayquaza, we know its moves too. The Dragon Ascent, Earth Power, Icy Wind, and Extreme Speed. And so the Xerneas, if there are 2 Pokemon on Brandon's team that you want your Xerneas to be in front of when you want to click Geomancy, this is probably it. So a pretty good immediate position for Leonard, because as he's going to get this Intimidate, which is going to mitigate damage from that Rayquaza, and he's going to be able to possibly Geomancy if he wants to go straight for it.
So one thing that we have that you did mention is that Icy Wind, which I think is possibly the most interesting part of this Rayquaza, right? And so at this point, we've seen the Icy Wind out of Suicune, we've seen the Tailwind out of Suicune. There's a lot of speed control available on Brandon's team, right?
Right.
And so now at this point, we've got the Dragon Ascent coming out of Rayquaza. Looks like he's not going to try and control any speed on the Xerneas with his Rayquaza, just wants to go for all-out damage. We do see that there's a decent chunk of damage that's missing from this attack just because of that Intimidate, not quite taking that Xerneas below half. Geomancy is going to go off at the moment, so that Salad Green Salamence. Ugh. And now we're just waiting on seeing what this Suicune wants to do here, which I think could be a pretty big factor for this match.
Yeah, it's you would imagine it had to be either Tailwind or Icy Wind, and it's good for Leonard that Brennan opted for Tailwind instead of Icy Wind because the Salamence came in and didn't take any damage, and so even though the Xerneas is at +2 and it's still going to be outsped by this Rayquaza, the Salamence comes in healthy and remains healthy, which is pretty important because now we can cycle Salamence back out if he wants to preserve that Intimidate.
Yeah, and for Brandon here, just having that Icy Wind still available, knowing that Salamence, like, taking that 4x super effective, unfortunately right now, Brandon has reduced that down to just normal super effective damage because of these strong winds that are out here. But, I mean, Icy Wind still should be able to do a decent chunk of damage, but it looks like Leonard understands that that is a potential threat, doesn't want anything to be any slower than it has to be, goes ahead and switches that Salamence out and protects his Xerneas to make sure that it's not going to take any damage here. And so Rayquaza going for Icy Wind, trying to slow that Xerneas down even further, but it looks like it's only going to hit into this Tapu Fini, so no misses yet in this match. And then, again, waiting on this Suicune, going for Snarl here, so he wants to reduce the boost on this Xerneas, the two most important boosts, right? That speed and that special attack.
Yeah, so I think that's a really smart play from Leonard because now he has this Tapu Fini and he gets to heal pulse his Xerneas. So Xerneas is at like 60%-ish now, and if it does take another Dragon Ascent, it'll go a little bit lower. But heal pulse is going to be such a huge asset for Leonard here because Suicune is not threatening damage at all. Suicune at this point is purely kind of around just as a support Pokemon. And we know that Rayquaza has taken that -1 special defense drop from that initial Dragon Ascent. And so a Dazzling Gleam from this +2 Xerneas is probably enough to knock it out. Gets some good damage on Suicune and then allows Xerneas to heal pulse back up to full. Or if not full, but very close to it.
Absolutely, and we've seen that there's quite a bit of bulk on this Rayquaza, but even so, that heal pulse is just gonna, it's gonna be so devastating if that indeed comes out. So we do see a Dazzling Gleam here from Xerneas going ahead and targeting both Suicune and Rayquaza. Rayquaza has been shown to be extremely bulky, but unfortunately not bulky enough to take that +1 Dazzling Gleam. And we do see another Snarl come out here for Suicune, trying to reduce that boost from Xerneas down to 0. And so now we've got that heal pulse coming out immediately, basically resetting the game board over for Leonard. Like, he's lost essentially 0 HP this match now.
Right.
And he's still got +2 special defense.
Yeah, he's got +2 special defense. I think he's at +1 speed and special attack, if I'm not mistaken. But, you know, even so, like, he's still going to be... This Xerneas isn't going anywhere anytime soon, especially thanks to that heal pulse.
And
it's
now that we see Tapu Koko come out, right? Tapu Koko's not usually a physical attacker.
Right.
I mean, how do you feel about this position for Brandon?
I think he's going to have a pretty hard time breaking the Xerneas, even if he's able to snarl it like 1 or 2 more times. The combination of, you know, the bulk increase from Geomancy and the heal pulse support from Tapu Fini is going to be really hard to power through.
Yeah, so, I mean, Tapu Koko here, I mean, obviously this is a pretty big threat to Tapu Fini, and Leonard respects that quite a bit, so he's going to go ahead and bring out Groudon here. Make sure that Groudon, you know, if there's an electric attack going into that Tapu Fini, it's not going to be effective in Groudon's ground typing. And now with the Rayquaza dealt with, because thanks to that Dragon Ascent dropping its defenses, right, that Dazzling Gleam was able to one-hit KO a very bulky Assault Vest Rayquaza, right?
Right.
So, I mean, man, this is a tough spot, but a beautiful Z move coming out here from Tapu Koko. This could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if it targets that Tapu Fini, it's obviously going to be pretty worthless, but instead it goes into that Xerneas slot, so not taking the bait, in one regard at least. He is still hitting into Protect, so it's not going to be doing a whole lot of damage, but luckily it's not completely wasted, and so we get a tiny little bit of damage done on Xerneas, and the Groudon comes in and just eats an Icy Wind.
And so at this point, if I remember correctly, the drops that we've had, right, this was 2 Snarls on that Xerneas that connected, 1 Icy Wind, because I think the Xerneas protected at one point, so it should be at +1 speed and +2 special defense, right?
Was it 2 Snarls or just 1?
I think it was 2, but
okay.
It is kind of, without being able to have all the information in front of us, that is a little tough, but, I mean, Brandon at this point is forfeiting. He understands what the odds are against him, so even though it's a 4-3 situation, because he previously scouted enough information from Leonard, do you agree that that's probably why he just forfeits there?
Yeah, I mean, I think he knew that his odds of winning were astronomically low, and it would have taken Leonard like choking pretty hard or getting really unlucky for him to have a shot. Like, I get just forfeiting to save time or like not reveal information, but at a certain point too, like you're in Top Cut, there's like you can't lose and then continue on in the tournament and hope you have good resistance or still squeak in the cut or something. So like I understand the forfeit just because like, okay, I'm not going to bother, why waste my time? But also, I don't know, I'm not sure if I would do it at this late stage of a tournament.
Yeah, and one thing that can be said about this is that if you find yourself in a position like that, right, you only have a minute and a half to decide your Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know that you're losing a match, right, the requirement to win is no longer in your court, right?
Right.
So you're forcing Leonard to eat up his mental stamina, making the correct decision, the non-losing decision, if you will.
Right.
And at that point, you, in Brandon's spot, right, you can kind of think about the next game going forward. So sometimes you'll see players do this, where it's an obviously losing situation.
Yeah. And they'll just stall out the timer to give themselves a little bit more time. Yep.
They'll stall out the timer. They'll use a double protect where it's obvious that they're in a very losing situation.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, I think that's kind of beneficial to kind of think about the next game just that little bit longer, right?
Yeah, I mean, it can never hurt. If you give yourself a little bit more time to prepare, you kind of increase your chances of coming up with the right idea. So I definitely agree there.
All right, so we do see a nice little change up here, and basically the leadouts here, all the games that we've seen between these two players have basically been completely different. So
yeah, they've both been mixing it up well, which I think is a good thing. You know, like obviously if you lose a game, there's probably something you could have improved, but you can always improve if you play well in a game too. And even if you don't need to improve on anything specifically, you can try to, you know, start thinking about how your opponent might adjust, and then you could counter that accordingly.
Yeah, so seeing this, I keep wanting to call it Incineroar because, like, once we got it released, right, that was the nickname that we gave it.
Right.
But seeing Incineroar out here with the fake out here, recognizing that is now he's got that new knowledge, right? That was the one bit of information that we didn't have previously. It's that this is Z Tapu Koko. And so we've got the Z move on this Tapu Koko, and Leonard is really showing Brandon a lot of respect for the threats that Brandon has on his team. And, you know, just making sure that he's locking out the major threats. You know, what's a big threat to this Xerneas right now? Taking a massive Z move in electric terrain and basically losing a Xerneas without a boost, or massively losing HP, right?
Yeah, no, very smart from Leonard. The Tapu Koko was more of a threat than Xerneas was on this turn. And I don't think Leonard's Incineroar has Roar. I think we saw Throat Chop earlier, which might kind of give away that's not carrying Roar. But still, like your Xerneas Geomanced faster. So that means you probably have the faster Xerneas, and that means you're in a much more serviceable position at this point, just because, you know, when you're two giant deers that are trying to throw the moon at each other, the one that's throwing it faster likely going to be the one that is a little bit more successful.
And it looks like Brandon here trying to go a little bit on the offensive with his Xerneas. Leonard is going to go ahead and U-turn out, preserve that fake out, preserve the Intimidate for a later point in the game. I really enjoy this switch, which was basically a free switch for Brandon, bringing out this Amoonguss. Unfortunately for Brandon, because that U-turn happens after a hard switch, it means that Leonard was able to know what the board positioning was for the next turn. So now he gets to bring out this Groudon, which is great positioning for Leonard. Having a Groudon up against an Amoonguss, knowing that basically you can freely launch a lot of attacks that are going to do a pretty big amount of damage to Amoonguss.
Yeah, and that's a very smart of Leonard to bring Groudon in on the U-turn there, because the Amoonguss, on Brandon's end, I think has already shown Clear Smog, and so if Leonard has the Salamence in the back, the Salamence is liable to get knocked out by a Dazzling Gleam or Moonblast, and so there's nothing that'll prevent Amoonguss from Clear Smogging. But bringing this Groudon in, you have the threat of a Fire Punch, or even a Fire Punch plus a Dazzle or Moonblast combo to get rid of the Amoonguss and prevent any Clear Smogs or Spores or anything like that.
Yeah, and I mean, at the point that we're at right now, Rage Powder is basically the only position that he could be in. So he's going to try and attract all the attention toward himself. And Leonard, again, respecting all the threats that his opponent has, going for the spread move with Dazzling Gleam. Moonblast is going to come in here to Leonard, Xerneas, and that's just going to be damage that he has to eat. Leonard understanding, hey, Fire Punch, take out this Amoonguss. It is one of the biggest threats on the field right now, just because it has so much ability with redirection. Once his electric terrain fades, he would be able to put things to sleep. So, I mean, just massive amounts of respect from Leonard to Brandon's threats, and Leonard's just playing what seems to be a very, very safe game right now.
Leonard's playing very well. He just knows, what the important targets are. Interesting that Brandon decided not to bring Incineroar to this game. It means that the Groudon on Leonard's end will not be intimidated and kind of has free reign. So the Rayquaza coming in is a little peculiar too, because, well, I guess it's not really, because, I mean, what's left? Koko and Rayquaza, and so
right.
If you're Brandon, you kind of have to start, picking what you want to sacrifice to this Xerneas. With that Amoonguss being knocked out immediately, there's not really much that's stopping Xerneas anymore.
One thing that's kind of cool about this is that Brandon has changed up how his Pokemon have kind of been moving around the board quite a bit right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Rayquaza now, because the Assault Vest is there, and basically let's call it intact because his Dragon Ascent wasn't used, so his defenses are all intact. So there's a chance that he could survive at least a Dazzling Gleam here.
He would definitely survive a Dazzling Gleam. I think that's a benchmark that they usually train for. Unfortunately, I don't think it's possible for them to survive a Moonblast. And so it looks like that's what's going to be coming out here.
Yeah, that Moonblast going straight into Rayquaza. While Rayquaza has hefty defenses, not able to survive that. So that does mean that the strong winds have dissipated, but the harsh sunlight is not reappearing.
Right.
So that means that Leonard, in order to get that harsh sunlight back, he's going to have to switch Groudon out and back in. But at this point,
I don't think he needs to, really.
Has Brandon done enough damage here that he can basically clear this Xerneas out with a Dazzling Gleam?
Dazzling Gleam might do the trick. It's good for Leonard that his Xerneas is faster, and so even if Brandon is able to knock Xerneas out with a Dazzling Gleam, Leonard's Xerneas will get one more attack off. Whether it be a Moonblast to try and knock out the opposing Xerneas, or something like a Dazzling Gleam to get some damage on Koko as well.
So we do see that Leonard is going to go ahead and protect, playing this game absolutely very safe. Looks like Nature's Madness is going to come out here and take away half of this Groudon's HP just immediately. Precipice Blades is coming out, going to connect with Tapu Koko, and that's a one-hit KO. So I think that was probably the best opportunity to get damage out of that Tapu Koko, yeah?
Yeah, no, I agree. The Nature's Madness at least gives Brandon a bit of a chance if he goes for Dazzling Gleam here, knocks out Xerneas and gets a critical hit on the Groudon. That might be his only out right now, but at least he has that shot. The Precipice Blades miss is unfortunate for Leonard, but he does hit the Koko, which means that he doesn't have to worry about should I Dazzling Gleam, should I Moonblast? That mind game is gone. So now all you have to do is just click Moonblast, and you're very, very likely going to be sealing this game up here.
So Incineroar is going to come out here with the fake out pressure. Moonblast from Leonard into Brandon's Xerneas. Brandon going for that Dazzling Gleam, trying to get as much damage out as possible. It looks like Dazzling Gleam was enough to pick up the KO here, but obviously with Primal Groudon being a fire type, that's going to reduce the amount of damage that it's going to take from any fairy moves.
Right, and Leonard just opting to play it safe here. He could have brought the Groudon in, tried to fake out and go for some kind of attack, but instead he brings in Tapu Fini. We know it has Haze, so anything other than something like a fake out into Xerneas and a Haze at this point would be pretty surprising to see, because as soon as you Haze, the Xerneas won't be able to knock out the Groudon in one hit, and so the Groudon can come back in and Fire Punch just to clear this game out.
Yeah, so we do have the fake out and the protect, and unfortunately protect doesn't protect against absolutely everything.
Right.
So the stat changes are going to be eliminated. Xerneas might, I don't even know that, depending on how bulky that Incineroar is, because he's got that dark typing, that fire typing kind of, it's a neutral damage from this Moonblast. So you're not super effective, but you're also not resisted here. So a critical hit does make sure that absolutely picks up that Incineroar. And then it looks like Leonard here doesn't see a whole lot of utility of doing anything but going for Haze. So yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle here. So
I'm not even sure that a critical hit would knock out Groudon from here, so it might be such an uphill battle that it's probably impossible. But well played from Leonard. You know, he played this very end game super safely, and there's no issue with that either. Like he knew that leaving Groudon vulnerable to getting critical hit by a Moonblast or something was, you know, one of the few ways that he could lose, and so he had good foresight to make sure he got the Haze off before he got Groudon in.
Yeah, and it looks like Leonard is just going to go ahead and spam Haze here. Not entirely sure if he's just trying to hold back any information that other people might not have seen yet.
Is he like misclicking, trying to go for Icy Wind or something? They're the same color.
I have a feeling that he's probably not. There could be some joking. Obviously, we are not on scene, so we don't get to see what's going on between the two players. There could be, because these players are friends, there could be just a little bit of this, like, oh, I'm going to use Protect. I'm going to use Protect. So, you know, when you're down to this point, there could just be some shenanigans going on between these players because they are such good friends. But again, Leonard spamming Haze here doesn't necessarily surprise me because because this is a streamed match, right?
Right.
There are people that he might play in Top Cut that might not have seen some of his previous matches on stream, right? Because they would have been playing as well. So at that point, now you're definitely playing more of an information game where you're trying to hold back any information that your competitors could see on stream. Right? Yeah,
that's very true. That's quite possible. And even if Leonard somehow lost his Groudon before it could knock out Xerneas, we know that Leonard's type of Fini has at least one damaging move, so it still would have been able to finish that game off had he absolutely had to. But that's a good point. It very likely could have been conserving information, just making sure that he didn't have to reveal more than he did.
All right, so that was the first top 4 match. I'm not actually sure if we're going to play the second top 4 match on stream. We are going to play it. Thank you, Leonard. So we are going to play that second top 4 match. Just give us a moment to set things up, and we'll be right back.